spot at one time spending $4 billion. Elon Musk might leverage $4 billion worth of investor money, but he doesn't pay out of pocket himself. That's why they're billionaires. So you got to think about that. Is that you still will need to invest. Oh, I agree. I agree. I agree. You do still need to invest. But when you start putting something away, 20 a week is a good deal to look at. Now, what we do on the show, we typically come in and we do questions and comments from the fans on Sundays. Today's Friday. You're going to see Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we talk about business politics, where Monday we talk about how politics negatively impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. Tuesday, we talk to you guys about how to make money, how to invest that money, how to budget that money. So you're going to start seeing some pretty interesting shows coming up on Tuesday. Wednesdays, we talk about different countries around the world that we can invest in and potentially live in cheaper and better. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, personal development, self-improvement, relationship topics, negotiation, socialization, building your brand. We discuss promotions, raises, retirement, and severance packages. And then we try to give you guys enough information for you to focus on building your 20-year plan. Because where you want to be at 20 years from now, where you want to be at 40 years from now, you have to reverse engineer that to what steps you need to do today in order to get to where you want to be tomorrow. If you want to buy a house in 3 months, you have to make sure your credit's right. You have to make sure that your money that you're going to use for down payments, any down payment assistance you're going to apply for, you got to qualify for that. Any you got to pay for the appraisal, any upfront cost or unexpected costs that you're going to need to pay for during the closing of the property, transfers of all of your utilities, or establishing new utilities if you're moving to another location, to a different state or a different side of the state where your current utility companies don't exist in that area. You're going to have to schedule movers, take a day off if you have to work, relocate your job if you don't work for yourself off your computer. You have to plan for where you want to be at in 3 months. And all of this stuff, if you got a wife, you got to worry about her job. If you've got kids, you got to worry about their school and their friends. You know, if you're separated, you got to worry about how you're going to transport the kids back and forth if you're moving further away. You know, all of these things have to be incorporated into the plan of how you're going to go forward. And that's what people don't think about. They live in a moment. They live from paycheck to paycheck. They spend money until they don't have any money. And then the only time that they wait and see is they wait and see when their next paycheck comes in so that they can take care of some stuff. Michael said, invest till your heart flatlines. That's right. So if you want a house, you will find a way, but you have to make a way more than just finding a way. There is always another way, but you have to make a way. And in order for you to make that way, you have to make a plan. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So with today's topic, we're supposed to be talking about why the millionaire mindset is to borrow against assets and get the things that you need instead of selling a bunch of stuff and getting the things you want. So what if I told you that everything that you've been taught about debt is wrong? Because I know that we've been on the show talking about debt, and I've been teaching you guys that the rumors that you hear about debt is wrong. Even when me and Michael were talking about this on the show quite a few times, he would run from debt and tell you guys, you know, debt's wrong. You want to have no debt, operate off of no debt. If you operate off of no debt, you have nothing to leverage against taxation. So I'm not going to say operate off of no debt. Operate off of no unnecessary debt. No unnecessary debt. But if you can leverage debt, you want to leverage that. The millionaire mindset, the reason why a millionaire mindset would buy them a brand new $100,000 car is because they have, one, $100,000 of capital to buy that car cash up front, and two, $100,000 worth of taxation that they can write off with that purchase of that $100,000 car, which ultimately makes the car free. Because if you would have gave Donald Trump $100,000 for taxes, you got a car for the same price. That's the logic of leveraging debt. Yeah, he said personal debt, yuck. I don't like personal debt. Business debt, okay, that's true. And the thing is that so you don't want to buy your pair of Jordans online and do 6 month monthly payments on a small loan. That's not what you want to do. You know, if you're gonna buy them, you're gonna buy them cash up front, but you're gonna buy them as work shoes, work boots. You're gonna buy them under your business. All of your employees, all 5 or 7 of your friends that work for your business, everybody gets a pair of Jordans, work shoes. Now, the work uniform is a tax write off because it doesn't matter what the work uniform is. What it matters is that if that's what you have to wear for the job, it is tax deductible. Think about that for a minute for those folks that want to buy $350 Jordans at 10 pairs and same freaking shoe in 10 different colors. Think about that $3,500 worth of shoes could have been work uniform. Just trying to throw it out there, right? So when people think about that, they think about it wrong. And for you, it's going to be a loan for a house or a car. It's a number on a statement that you have to pay down, a source of stress, a drain on your monthly income. But for most people, debt is a 4 letter word. It's a burden, a necessity, an evil to get the things that we need and something to escape from as fast as possible. So you've got the poorest of poor that just pay debt to pay debt. I have to make money to pay debt. Then you have the middle class individuals that are afraid of debt. They run from the debt. Then you have the wealthy that are like, bring that debt on. The entire financial world for the middle class is going to be built around one single idea, which is becoming debt free. You can tell where a person sits at in their financial status without even knowing where they come from. Michael's a middle class individual because he lives the mentality of being debt free, which is not wrong. And from the poorer class, an individual would live from the mindset of paying down debt. So you know that you're in a financial class of poor, the lower class, because your mindset is, I have to pay this debt down. Middle class mindset is, I'm going to live debt free. The upper class mindset is, I'm going to use this debt as a profit. Michael says, personal debt costs you money. Business debt should give you money, but business fail too. So good for me. Well, the thing is that if you leverage your, so here's a funny thing, and I've talked about this before. They have a thing called shell corporations, and they also have like true to life businesses. If you have business debt, money owed in one business where stuff was bought with a credit card, stuff was bought with a cash loan, the loan is tied to business A. The assets purchased were assigned to business B. So the house, the car, the yacht, whatever, all the assets belong to business B. If you got the green title, if you've got the clear deed, if you've got the all of the assets are not tied to loans or mortgages or anything else, it is cash up front over here. If business A goes belly up, any non-personal guarantor credit cards, any unbacked debt that belongs to that business, when that business liquidates, the assets that are not tied to a loan, the assets that are not tied to a financial contract, that asset still exists. If a business liquidated and you still got credit cards that are in good standings, them credit cards are still in good standings. The debt is going to liquidate unpaid accounts versus liquidatable assets. So if you have two businesses and one business controls the money and the other business controls the assets, if the money goes under, the assets are still secured. Now, if you think about it like that, what a lot of people try to do is they try to put the assets in their personal name and put the debt in their business name, and that doesn't always work out. Because if you're the personal guarantor of the business, when the business goes under, if you guaranteed any of the money, they're still going to liquidate some of your assets to cover that debt. But if it's not yours and it's not the business, and no account that you're a guarantor of is involved in the liquidation, then when the business goes under, it goes under by itself. And all the other stuff is still there. How do you think Donald Trump went bankrupt 6 times and is still a billionaire? Because he himself didn't go bankrupt. The business doing business as Donald Trump went bankrupt. And true to life, funny, you can establish a business and then have a doing business as name where he could have a Kentucky Fried Chicken as a business and doing business as Donald Trump. And anytime that happens, he can continue using his name as a walking business. That is a ball and chain if not used correctly. That is definitely true. Well, I'm going to keep saying that I'm poor so that the IRS will look at me and be like, yeah, I'm not going to work that. He said, can those assets go into a trust? Yes, it can. But a trust is going to be exactly what I said, a second entity. If you have a business and you have a trust, a business can hold the debt. You bought the house cash up front. You do a quick claim deed, put it into the trust. The trust owns the house. The money that you borrowed, if you took out a cash loan against something else to get the house, you own the house free and clear. The house is in the trust. If the business goes under, the business, the debt, and any assets tied to that debt is going to get liquidated. But the property that's free and clear in the trust, that's not the same. That's secured. And because the trust has got the property, if you yourself are involved in a legal action and you're not the direct person over the trust, where you have a third party over the trustee as a trustee, you're likely not going to be tied to the trust either. Where the trust is going to be its own thing and you just get paid from the trust. Like collecting checks from McDonald's without ever having to work for McDonald's. They're not going to close. They're not going to shut down McDonald's because you got into a lawsuit. Now, if you're the CEO, they might shut it down, but they're not going to shut it down if you just get paid from it. Big difference. It's all in how you set up your trust, and it does actually impact which country you set your trust up in, because a lot of trusts are dissolved in America if you don't set the trust up correctly in America, because America has control over anything established in America. But if you set your trust up in Beijing, America can't do nothing to that, because all of the tax law, the tax treaty laws that they have with transparency is for personal accounts, not trust accounts, not business accounts. So if you set up a trust in a country that's not America and you put the assets under the authority of that trust, all they know is Beijing Bank Incorporated owns this house. That's all you know. But Beijing Bank Incorporated is a trust in Bangkok, not even Beijing. It ain't got nothing to do with America, but America cannot go to Beijing or Bangkok and make that trust or the trustee over that trust do anything with the asset that's in America, because they don't have jurisdiction over that contract, that ownership. You're not directly tied to that. And which is one of the reasons why wealthy individuals do offshore banking. And they not only do offshore banking, they do offshore non-residential trusts, because if they set up those offshore non-residential trusts, they're less likely to have to deal with civil litigation in America that will dissolve that trust, because that trust is not directly tied to the United States. They can't even really do too much taking action on trusts from other countries based on childcare. Because if you have child support that you have to pay, if you're getting paid money, they can garnish the money that's being paid to you, but they can't liquidate a trust in another country to get back child support. So if you're not really getting paid from the trust, you're just able to use the trust assets, use the trust cars, live in the trust houses, rent free, mortgage free, gas free. The trust puts gas in the car. The trust pays for the car repair. The trust pays for the phone bill. The trust pays for everything except for your food and your clothes, which you pay for yourself. If the trust pays for everything else, if it ain't giving you anything, they can't really tax you through the trust for childcare. They can put you in jail in the United States. They can make you sell what you own if you own anything of monetary value. But I mean, if you don't own anything but the clothes on your back, how much can you get for all the clothes in your closet? Like I said, transfer the assets to another business. Exactly. That's exactly what you would do. You either transfer it to another business or transfer it to to a trust, and that way, the money is separate from the stuff. Um, when we think about the ultra wealthy, though, they're going to see debt completely different. They see it as a system, a deliberate playbook to control cash flow, legally erasing taxes, and building a financial empire. And this isn't about getting out of debt. This is about using the debt to win. This is the great financial divide because for one group of individuals, debt is a trap. It's used to buy liabilities, things that take money out of your pocket that does not put any money back into your pocket. Think about a car loan for a vehicle that loses 20% of its value the second you drive it off the lot. Think about credit card debt for stuff that's worthless in a year. This is bad debt. This is the debt that me and Michael agree you should not be obtaining. It makes you poorer because the impulse buys that you have for the things that make you smile in the moment, but in a few months or a few years, it's a ornament on the wall in your house. Like, yeah, I bought it, but it doesn't really help you. It doesn't really benefit you. You don't really turn over a profit from it. It's a waste of time, right? It's gonna serve the lender, right? You're not the lender, you're the borrower. So you want to change that. Exactly. Using the tax system. This is the idea that we want to think about leveraging our assets. So when you start deciding if you're going to buy something, we're going to get down to it throughout the show. But one of the things that you want to think about is, can I make a profit off of this? And when you ask yourself that question, Michael's got an old Toyota. Not Michael, Steven's got an old Toyota. If Steven needed to upgrade his car to a newer Toyota, he would reasonably buy a newer Toyota, slightly less miles, reasonably good condition, with very little unacquired maintenance required for him upon purchase. Buying that vehicle cash up front. Doesn't have to be a 2026. He could trade in a 1986 and get him a 2019. It doesn't have to be within it could be a 10-year-old car. He could get him a 2016. And then, because if he's spending the same quantity of money of fixing that 1986, he can actually spend that money to upgrade to a 2019. And why would you upgrade your car in that dynamic? It would be because the parts are discontinued. You can't find a mechanic to fix it. It's starting to cost more money to repair it than it does to replace it. When it's an antique, when it's 30 plus years old, you might want to hold on to it because some antique guy might want to buy it off of you for the same amount of money you paid to fix it, which is kind of a $0 reimbursement. It's a zero sum game. But when you start thinking about reliability, if your 1986 is starting to cost more money per month to maintain than it does for you to make profits while using it, you might want to think replacing it for something that doesn't require a lot of work. In that dynamic, you upgrade the car, but you're buying a car cash up front. So you might buy you a $10,000 Toyota. You can find you a 2019 Toyota for $10,000, a Corolla, a Camry, a Fox body or hatchback. You can find you one. That doesn't cost a lot of money and likely have pretty good miles on it. Now, the difference between that and buying a G-Wagon or buying a Hellcat or buying a 2026 that's going to have the extra $15,000 worth of tariffs included into the price is the need for it. The value of the car. You're not going to make money off of that brand new car the way you're going to make money off of driving to and from work from the car that you replaced with the car that you have now. So if you need transportation to get to and from work and you're buying a car to get it done, it would make a lot of sense to do what Michael says do in this scenario, go get it from an auction. Is it auction, drive it for a while and then sell it for a profit and do that 5 times per year before you need a dealer's plates. And you can buy them from the auction. You can, but if you're looking for a daily driver, you can just go there one time. You can buy the car. You can hold on to it, and if you need to do something to it, you can take care of it for a little bit, and then it gets you where you got to go. $3,000 to $5,000 from an auction can get you a car that'll last you 10, 15 years. The benefit of that is that you bought a car with the amount of money necessary to get you to and from work, and the amount of money you're making off of your job is more than the cost of the car. So the car almost pays for itself, right? But a $50,000 Hellcat and you're making $30,000 a year, you're not recouping that cost, right? Completely different scenario. He said, in my state, if you don't have a dealer's license, you cannot go to the auction. Yes, you can, because you yourself do not need a dealer's license or an auction's license. You need to accompany somebody with a dealer's license or an auction's license. So what happens is that what a lot of people do at auctions is they will charge you a nominal fee. I can't tell you how much it is because it depends on the person, what city and what state that you are. And you can go with them to the auction, and then they will pick up whatever you want on your behalf, and then you drive away with it. Now, that requires a networking, but you find somebody with an auctions license or a dealer's license or whatever, and they're planning on going to the auction. Hey, can I come with you and pick something up on your license? Sometimes 50, sometimes 100, sometimes more, but usually it ain't nothing out of their pocket because you're buying the car with your money, and they're getting paid for you to sit next to them when you're buying the car with your money. Most of the time, somebody with an auctions license is going to say yes, or a dealer's license, they're going to say yes. So you can go without your own individual license, and then whatever you do, whatever the two of y'all do with the car after the car has been bought under the other guy's license, that's got nothing to do with the auction, long as they got paid for the vehicle. So if you go there with person A, they've got a license, you don't, you give them the money to buy the car that you want, they pick it up for you, and then you register it, drive away, everybody's satisfied. The auction got their money, the dealer, person A, they got their money, you got the vehicle you wanted. If they kept the difference, whatever that was, that's their payment. Everybody's satisfied. But you're still going to pick that car up for far less than what you would have gotten if you would have went to a used car dealership and bought that exact same car from a used car dealership. So can you go to an auction by yourself, not know anybody, and then go and pick up a car? Not all the time, because in Florida, you do need a dealer's license, an auction's license, if not a dealer's license, to go to certain auctions. But you also can go to some police auctions where they're selling the cars to the general public, and pick up cars from the police auctions where they seize cars and repossess cars from crimes. I'm not fond of that one. And the reason why I'm not fond of that one, because depending on the previous owner, they might want to collect their car back. And that could leave you in a problem. Once they get out of jail, they want to get their car back. And that might leave you with a problem. But if it's just a regular repossession, it's not going to be that big of an issue. Yeah, dealers only auctions, true. Public auctions, you can. So yeah, just so I got to that right after. Much more public auctions. But Michael, he might have just accidentally stepped into the wrong room, and out of the 300 public auctions there were, the one public auction that week was the one that were dealers only. He walked in and they turned him around. It can happen, but all it takes is for you to look at some of the dealers in the room and say, hey, would you pick up a car for me? I'll pay you to pick up a car for me. They're going to state their price, and if it's reasonable price, you're in. But if you want to do it yourself, yeah, go find yourself a public auction. Go to an estate sale where they're selling the car of the house. Pick up the car. They have some over there too. But the purpose of the discussion is, truthfully, is that you're able to only buy what you need, not the things that you want, and then leverage the things that you get to get more things that you need, or get more things that turn you profits. Because like I was about to say, the other group of individuals that's not benefiting the lender, this is going to be the few who understand the real rules of money and the debt that is being used as a weapon. It's going to be a calculated instrument of power, precision engineered to acquire assets, things that put money into their pockets. Like, instead of buying a cyber truck, you go buy a fleet of robo taxis. Make you some money off of. For these individuals, debt isn't a loan to be feared, but a tool to be mastered. They don't just avoid debt, they actively seek it out. They love debt. This isn't a contradiction, it's a strategy. And it is the strategy that keeps them in a position of permanent financial advantage. You know, and one of the things that, just like even with this, I told you guys before, there is a company that I found in Florida that will front you money to buy cars from the auction, and then you just got to pay them monthly payments until you pay them back. I think like $50, $60 a month till you pay them back. If you follow Michael's method, pick up a car out of the auction, hold it for a little bit, and sell it. Um, if you contract it with this particular company, I can't remember their name off the top of my head, they use their money, buy the car out of the auction, sell it for more than what you paid for it, plus the cost to hold it. And then after the person buys the car off of you, you pay off the car to the person who lended you the money and keep the difference. So if they're charging you, say, $60 a month, you're going to hold the car for, say, 3 months. That's $180. So you got $200 already on top. Let's say you put $300 worth of maintenance on a $500 worth of maintenance on a car. You're at $800. The car cost you $1,000. You're at $1,800. You sell that car for $4,000. It's a cash car. You made a $2,200 profit off of that car. And if they negotiated the price down $500, you still made a $1,500 profit off of the car. And that's holding a car for 2 months, selling it, and then going back to the auction and doing it again. It is something that can be done. And if you're the kind of person that only picks up cars from the auction that are requested by individuals who want specific makes and models, you already have a buyer before you go to the auction to buy the car. Then when you get the car, you're contacting the client saying, hey, I got what you're looking for. And you can sell it to them right off the tip. And that keeps your inventory low if you were trying to go down that path. But that requires you to go to the auction often. I'm too lazy for that. So today we're going to be pulling back yet another curtain on the advantages of this very kind of playbook of leveraging your assets to gain more wealth. And we're going to go beyond the simplistic good debt versus bad debt advanced discussions that you've heard of thousands of times. We're going to deconstruct how the rich use debt not as a simple loan, but as a sophisticated system for financial dominance. This is going to be the conversion that you need. And this is the very conversation that you were never meant to hear. Really, while I was thinking about it just now, you know that you can structure a trust that is capable of loaning you money, and then you pay that trust back with interest. And whatever you borrowed out of the trust, you use that capital to pay whatever it is that you're trying to pay for, and then you can take whatever you got to take and pay back the trust over a period of time. And as you're paying back the trust, that's paying back a loan. Yeah, the trust is going to be paying taxes on any profits that it makes off of loaning money. But if the beneficiaries can borrow from the assets in the trust, if the beneficiaries can borrow liquidatable assets from the trust, then the trust, it's, instead of you having to take a hit on your credit report to ask a bank for money, you can take a hit. You don't even have to take a hit. You can just contact your trustee and say, hey, I want to borrow 100 grand. You got to pay it back 150 grand. Who cares? I'm just saying, for example, it could be something different. It could be 10%. You could say 10 or 20%. I want to borrow 100 grand. You got to give me back 120 grand over the course of X number of whatever. And now you're doing lower monthly payments. You're guaranteed the loan. The trust is going to turn over a profit because you're going to be paying back the debt. You're able to get the asset separate from the debt. If you're doing this with family that is going to take care of the trust, not family that's just going to take all the money out of the trust and run, you would be able to build wealth because your credit score will never have a credit hit on it for a loan. The only time you're actually getting an installment loan is because you're doing it on purpose for a financial opportunity, not because you're trying to pay for your college tuition or because you're trying to fix your house or whatever the case may be, because you're doing it because you're investing in a multifamily home, or you're investing in a big construction deal or something to that effect, which allows you to get closer to that 800 credit score. It allows you to get closer to that 850 credit score, which allows you to get closer to that black card unlimited credit line. Just got to tell you, people don't think about these things. Make sure y'all mash these reaction buttons as we keep going through tonight's show. Michael says, I was at KFC the other day talking with a DoorDash driver. He says he makes about 200 to 300 per day. That is before taxes. He probably pays about $100 on taxes and about $30 on food, but he still makes a good quantity of money after all expenses. I can vouch for DoorDash, Postmates, and Instacart. They can bring back between $200 to $300 a day. It's typically over the course of a 10-hour day, so you're averaging about $20 to $30 an hour with tip, unless you got really high tippers. And you're probably going to be burning between, depending on what kind of vehicle you have, you're going to burn a tank of gas every day, at least one tank of gas every day. And if you've got a car that's got low gas, then you're probably going to, or cheap gas, you're probably going to be doing like, $30 to $50. But if you have a gas guzzler, then you're probably going to be doing like $100, $150. And that's going to be the difference between the total profit. So he grosses about $300 a day, but his net after he bought lunch twice, because he's probably going to eat every 4 hours, get him something to drink, and then fill up his tank, he might have between $150 to $200 a day. But if he's doing that 7 days a week, if he's doing that 30 days a month, that's still $200 times 3, which is like $6,000. Yeah, because it's been not 330. So 200 times 30, it's like around $6,000. So they're still making a decent quantity of money. And that's one of the reasons why people do that for a living as a primary source of income. It's a lot of hassle though, because you put a lot of miles on your vehicle. You're doing a few hundred miles a day, every day. You're in your vehicle all the time. Your car stinks from the food that they buy, because the stuff doesn't come out, especially if you have material instead of leather. And you can't always help that things waste on your back seat, and then you just got to clean that stuff up. And the cost of cleaning doesn't come out. That comes out of your pocket. That doesn't get billed to the customer. But doing DoorDash, Postmates, and Instacart, you're only dealing with the food. You don't deal with the people outside of giving them their stuff, so you don't have people vandalizing your car. So that's probably the plus side. You don't have people throwing up in the backseat of your car, trying to break your car because you didn't want to give them a free ride, trying to steal your car, stuff to that effect. You don't have those experiences. So, it is what it is. Yeah, it's poor. It's poor. It's poor because when you think about $20 to $30 an hour, and then you got to take out the cost of eating and the cost of driving all day long, you're now at $15 to $20 an hour. That's all day long. You could have been making that kind of money making waffles at a Waffle House, standing still, not putting miles on your car. They paying for night shift like $18 to $22 an hour for you to stand still and scream waffle. I'm just saying. Now, let's get one thing straight tonight. When a high net worth individual borrows $10 million, they are not thinking the same way that you are when you take out a mortgage. Your primary concern is how and when can I pay this back? Their primary concern is how can I make this loan pay for itself and then some, while I pay as little tax as legally possible. Completely different mindset. This is the fundamental revolution. You see a transaction, they see a system. You see a liability, they see an opportunity. The loan itself is just one cog in a much larger machine designed to do three things: magnify returns, minimize taxes, and maintain control. This system has a name, a phrase whispered in the circles of private wealth managers: buy, borrow, die. That's what we hear. It sounds morbid, but it is one of the most powerful wealth building tactics ever devised, and it is entirely legal. It leverages the tax code to create a cycle of perpetual tax free wealth accumulation if you do it right. They said, Waffle House always hiring security guards. Right. But think about this, though. You can either be a cook, you can be a server, or you can be a security guard. Either way, you're standing still and you're making more than $20 an hour to do it instead of driving around from house to house making that same $20 an hour to bring people their stuff. I know the window is open. That's why the books is gonna move. They supposed to move. It is hot, and I'm not wasting money on the he said you got a sub, keep going. Yeah, I'm not wasting money on the AC. It's about 79 to 81 degrees right now. And it is easier to crack a window, let the night air come in and turn on a ceiling fan than it is to burn the AC unit, where the light bill will be upward of 200 something dollars burning the AC, when we can use the natural resources of technology back when we were kids: box fans, ceiling fans, and night air. That's all you really need. That's all you really need. If it gets hotter than that, take your ass outside. That cool breeze you get, because see, I walk my dog twice, at least twice a day. And if I walk outside and it is cooler outside than it is in my house, what the hell do I have my AC on for? That makes absolutely no sense. Exactly. You just have a box fan and a screen door open. That's it. And I mean, if you don't have a screen door, they sell the ones on Temu that have the curtain thing that covers your front door. You can have your front door open and have that curtain in front of the front door that keeps the mosquitoes from coming in. And you can just have the door open, have the fan facing in the house, and blow the cold air from in the house, from out of the house into the house, and that'll circulate air in your house, and then you don't have to waste all that money on AC. And if you got windows that don't have screens on them, you can get that same curtain, put it over the windows, put the box fan in the window, and have the box fan blow the cool air into the house through the window, and then leave the door open and have it blow the stuff out of the house. Now, when people say, "What about security?" I mean, that's what Glock switches are for. So, I mean, if they decide to walk into your house because your door's sitting wide open, you just make sure they don't walk back out. That's how it is. He said, that's what the drugs oh no, no, you're not on drugs, bro. It's moving. It's moving. The backdrop is moving. So think about this. The normal way to get cash from your investment is to sell your investment, no matter what you have. You buy a stock for $100, it grows to $1,000. To use the $900 profit, you have to sell the stock, right? The moment you sell, you trigger a taxable event, um, and you owe capital gains on the taxes at the point of profit. Depending on where you're living, that could be 20% or more. So your $900 profit instantly shrinks to about $700 or less, especially once you cross over the threshold of like $14,000. He's at loaded 410 by me driving. Well, I got one right next to me. And I keep it tactical ready. There's never a scenario. I can probably, as easily as I can reach for this cup of coffee, I could probably reach and reload. And I make sure of that. And call me paranoid, but I always face the door. So Ain't nobody sneaking in from behind. He said, so you loan to buy stock. You can actually use loans to buy stocks. So, but one of the things you have to do to use a loan to buy stocks, you have to borrow money. And in order to borrow money, you're going to need one or two things. You're going to need good credit with good payment history to borrow cash that is unsecured, or you're going to need to leverage assets to borrow cash that is secured. Then you take that cash and you put it on stocks. The only time that that is beneficial is if the interest rates of the loan is far lower than the interest rates of the stock. For example, let's say you decide to take a home economic loan out on your house at, say, 7%, 8%. Let's say 8%. It shouldn't be that much, but let's say that it was 8%. And you borrow, doesn't matter how much it is, you borrow $100,000 for your house at 8%. You put $100,000 into a brokerage account. A lot of the brokerage accounts is going across the bottom of the screen. If you're looking at this by 16 by 9, it's going across the top of the screen if you're looking at it at 9 by 16. A lot of those stocks can be giving you upward of 18 to 20% right now. They're real estate investment trusts, BDCs, and if you're getting 18% back off of that stock option, then the 10% that you're paying in interest to the loan minus the 8% profit, where let's go ahead and say that that 18% might lose 2 or 3% for taxation and bring you down to about 15%. But the 8% that you paid back out of the 15% gives you a 17% a 7% profit. The 7% profit after taxes, or 10% profit before taxes, that 7% profit after taxes is you borrowing money from somebody else to make money with somebody else without having to spend a dollar yourself. So even if you leverage your house for 50 grand or leverage your house for 100 grand and you put that 100 grand into a brokerage account that was paying you back 10% more than what you owed for the loan, you could pay the loan back and keep the difference. Now, the difference is going to be taxable income because the 8% that you're putting on the loan is going to be covered under paying back the loan tax blanket. The 10% difference, that's going to be the taxable income because it's not going towards loan. Now, if it's going towards another loan somewhere else, that's how you cover the spread. But the thing is that yes, you can borrow money and then go buy stocks with it. You can leverage your stock portfolio. If you have $200,000 worth of stocks, you can leverage your stock portfolio for 50% of the value of your portfolio and borrow 100 grand to double down on your stock portfolio. And now you got $300,000 in your stock portfolio, which allows you at the same levels to gain back more money. It just depends if the interest rates on that line of credit is lower than the interest rates on your brokerage account. And you can take all the profits that you get off of that and pay down that debt faster, which reduces the interest rates, and then you can borrow again. Where now that you got 300, you can now borrow 150, and now you're at 450, and then you can pay it down, and you can keep doing that. But it depends on if you're turning a profit off of it. If you're owing more than you're making, then it's not going to work because you can borrow from PayPal at like 25%, put it into a brokerage account that's giving you 10%, and you're losing 15%. See what I'm saying? Upfront loaded or pay after the sell to the broker. That depends. I would try to work it out where if you're paying the broker directly, that the broker gets their cut at a flat rate or fixed rate scenario. If you're dealing with interest rates, it's not really gonna the interest rates that are monthly payments is typically upfront loaded when they're doing the extended payment options, but it doesn't matter to you if it's upfront loaded or not when you're dealing with, because they could do balloon payments where your payments are really low but you're only paying for interest rates in the beginning, and then the back end is going to be higher notes but you're now paying more towards the principal. It doesn't really matter what the contract says, it matters what you do with it. So even if you have a $200 a month thing that's a balloon payment that's going to be $700 a month in like 10 years. If you're paying $1,000 a month right now, you can pay that shit off before it gets there. So whether or not it's upfront loaded or back loaded or um, on sale to the broker, what matters is how you decide to utilize the capital to make money, and then how you decide to pay on the debt is when you calculate the opportunity cost. He says, so how is this done with student loans without taking a risk of losing a lot? Simple. Your student loans have lower interest rates than housing, at least up until June. Your government-backed loans are going to be between 4 and 7%. You have secured loans that are going to be interest deferred and payment deferred until you graduate. You have unsecured loans that are not going to be interest deferred, but it will be payment deferred until you graduate. Each loan that you take out, the payment is deferred. So you're not spending that money, because if you've got grants and scholarships that's covering everything else that you need, the loans that you take out is extra money, typically going towards room and board, but you already got a job covering room and board. So the money you don't need from the student loans that you're borrowing against, you can put that into a brokerage account that's making 15, 18% interest. If you only owe the school 6% and you're making 18%, you've got a 12% profit off of that. You're not going to make your first payment on student loans until 6 months after you stop going to school. So if you're going to be in school for the next 8 years, you are payment free for 8 years. And that 8 years, that money is sitting in a brokerage account making money. Now, when you stop going to school, when your money is due, they might start charging you $500 a month. You have a brokerage account that can give you $750 a month. And as you make those payments on your student loans until tax laws change, that is a tax deduction. That's how you pull that off. And now Donald Trump put a cap up to $200,000 on undergrads. So if you can get 200 grand out of your education, and you didn't need that 200 grand for your education, and you put that 200 grand into a brokerage account that is making more interest back than what you owed in interest for the undergrad, then by the time you get out of school, you've got 200 grand that's potentially giving you 15% interest, which is $30,000 a year. And if that $30,000 a year is going on your student loans, you are not paying out of pocket for your education. Your education is being paid for by your brokerage account. So now you're paying and if you had $200,000 worth of debt and your brokerage account is paying $30,000 a year towards that debt, then that debt would be paid off inside of what, 4 years. And as you're putting 30 grand at a time down, that debt's going to go down. Your credit score is going to go up. Your payments are going to look sexy. You're not going to have to worry about that. He said, so let's just say average Joe, 40,000 yearly. How would you build actual wealth? Well, average Joe making 40,000 a year should be living at 30% of his income. And that would be around about $15,000 a year if you're doing it right. If you got a lot of stuff that you want to live off of, you're going to be living on 20,000 a year. Out of the 20,000 a year, the other 20,000 a year could be going into a brokerage account. If it were going into a brokerage account, then you would be able to make yourself a millionaire inside of about 15 years, 10 to 15 years. So instead of lifestyle creep, as you make more money, you buy more stuff. As you make more money, you get bigger houses and get bigger cars and take more girls out on dates. Instead of doing that, you deal with what you need and do that for 10 to 15, and you're a multimillionaire. You're now making back, even at 15% interest, $150,000 a year off of $1 million, where you're making 4 times more than what you were making off of your regular $40,000 a year job. At any point in time between 10 and 15 years of doing this, once you've crossed over the $40,000 a year mark where you're making more money off the brokerage account than what you're making off of your job, that is the moment where you can Austin 316, 2 middle fingers to your boss, and walk off the job and be like, fuck it, I don't need it anymore, if you want to stay at the current standard of living that you're at. But if you want to upgrade from the $20,000 a year lifestyle to a $40,000 a year lifestyle where everything is bought and paid for. So think about exactly how expensive that is. If everything is bought and paid for, you still have $40,000 a year worth of stuff to spend to pay for, right? But if you went to a $40,000 a year lifestyle and you're bringing in $80,000 a year from your brokerage account, which is probably around $500,000, you're still doing good. You don't have to work anymore. The rest of your life is covered, and it only took you 10 to 15 years of being fiscally responsible. No bullshit, and you'll be rich. That's how it works. So don't waste the money. Another way that you can do it, you could be making 35,000 a year. You could be dating a chick that's making 40,000 a year. Y'all are together making 75,000 a year. Y'all could live off of 45,000 a year, which allows y'all to put away 30,000 a year, which means that y'all can still do the exact same thing and make yourselves millionaires within 10 to 15 years. Y'all just have to not fuck up the relationship, not fuck up the money. You'll be millionaires within 10 to 15 years, multi-millionaires, talking about 1.5 to $2.4 million within 20 to 25 years. And y'all be able to travel the world. Y'all would, your house will be bought and paid for. All your cars will be bought and paid for. Your kids would have a paid ride through college, and y'all would not need to work anymore. Y'all would not have any more stress. That's how you do it. It's being responsible. But as long as you are making 40,000 a year, you're spending $45,000 a year, your ass is always going to be broke. You're always not going to have enough money. You're always going to be hitting your homeboy, hey man, can I borrow some money? You're always going to be hitting up your brother or your sister, hey, can I borrow some money? You're always going to be visiting your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, hey, can I borrow some money? Or since you know that they'll give it to you, you don't have to ask. You just pass by them, dragging your feet with your head down, big sigh. Oh man, I wish I had X number of dollars to do X, Y, and Z, so that they could just give it to you, so that it's a gift instead of a request. Either way it goes, you're in a situation where you're putting your pride on the line to tell people that you can't afford to take care of yourself when you could have just took care of yourself. People who say I can't just don't want to. It's not that you can't. You can do anything you want to do in your life outside of the people that have more authority than you in your situation that stop you from doing it. So it's not that you can't. Either you don't want to do it for yourself, or someone else is physically in your way stopping you. If there's nobody physically in your way stopping you, you're not doing it because you don't feel like it. He said, what's the major? You remember Michael said that he was in the I think psychiatry. He was talking about doing clinics and stuff to that effect. Michael said, if you're young, high risk stocks, you have time to recover from your mistakes. Yes, but if you go and buy cash dividend paying stocks, you don't have to recover from shit. You just buy it and just get paid off the dividends. So unless one of the 52 stocks that I have grabbed tanks over the next 15 years, which is highly unlikely because these are stocks that have been around over 30 years, but it is possible. Unless one of those stocks tank, and that's where the most of your money is, unless that happens, you're not looking at losing out on a lot of stuff, which is why they say diversify. They say keep 10 to 20% of your money in any one location. So if one of the stocks go under, you only lost 20% of your investment, but the other 80% is still there. He said, biggest mistake, not starting. I keep telling them that. The biggest mistake is not starting. The biggest mistake is telling yourself, I'm going to start investing after I pay off all of my debt. You should start investing while you're paying off debt. You should take some of your money and put on your investment first, and then take some of your money and put it on your debt. You should take your entertainment money and put it on your investment opportunities, and then take bill money and put it on debt. As your brokerage account goes up, your debt goes down. You should have the ability to see results on both sides. Yeah, become an auto dictator. I said that wrong. Auto did that. Look now, the old school using high tech words for saying be financially responsible with your shit. The wealthy are going to look at these investment opportunities and see an unacceptable loss when you're wasting money on impulse buys that don't generate wealth. Not just of the tax money, but of the future growth that money could have generated when you're wasting money on things that don't turn you profits. So they ask different questions than what everybody else asks. How can I access the value of my assets without selling them? Because you don't want to sell stuff. You don't want to sell stuff if you don't have to. The answer is to borrow against them. A loan is not considered income by the IRS. It's a debt. Therefore, it is not a taxable event. This is going to be the key to the whole system. Dictator. That's what I keep trying not to say. I'm an auto dictator. Be a monetary dictator. Now, look, by pledging their appreciating assets, assets that increase in value, their stock portfolio, their real estate, as the collateral, they can get a loan from a bank for a huge chunk of assets value. They can get cash to live on, to invest, or to buy other businesses in, all without selling a single share and without having to pay a single cent of capital taxes. Autodactive. But see, you didn't have the TIVE. You had autodact up there. And it's actually spelled autodidact. AUTODIDACT, not autodactive. I can pronounce autodactive, but autodidact is completely different. See the difference between what you got there? You see, so for those of you that's looking right there, autodidact, autodactive. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? Autodactive. That's two different words now. I know. Big thumbs. Big thumbs and autocorrect that just messes up the text. And after you hit submit, it's like shit, I can't edit it. But well, let that sink in for a second. Let that sink in. When wealthy individuals, when they get cash, but the original asset is still sitting in their portfolio, growing, compounding, and appreciating in value, they have successfully separated the liquidity from the ownership of the asset. And this is a level of financial engineering the average person is never taught. Special shout out to Uncommon Woman. And it's real. We're not taught this kind of stuff in home economics. We're not taught this kind of stuff in AP classes in high school. We're not taught this stuff in accounting class, business class. Where there's no college course that teaches this for the poor people who get financial aid to go to college. If you're hearing about stuff like this outside of this podcast, you're hearing about stuff like this from wealthy individuals that are mentoring you. Your uncle, your grandfather that owns multiple businesses, 100 acres of land. You're hearing about you're a trust fund baby where your parents and grandparents are second and third generation wealth, and they're teaching you how to operate as second and third generation wealth. You don't want to hear it like piano lessons, and they're telling you this type of stuff to help you stay financially successful. That's when you hear this. But the average person, 75% of America, doesn't hear this. Right? That's why I tell y'all to mash those reaction buttons as y'all watch the show. And special shout out to the individuals that's watching us from Twitch and Twitter, because I see y'all. I see y'all. Y'all can comment on the show too. This is a highly interactive podcast. So this is not about taking out a loan because you're broke. It's about taking out a loan because you're smart. There's a difference when you don't have enough money and you need money and you borrow money. That is broke spending. When you had all the money you needed to do what you needed to do, but you borrowed money anyway to leverage that for an asset, that is high wealth spending. You're going to use the bank's money to fund your life and your new investments, while your own money continues to work for you, undisturbed and tax deferred. This is going to be the core system. The first and most fundamental piece of this system is creating a cash flow machine. The wealth doesn't use debt to buy liabilities that drain the cash. They use debt to acquire assets that produce income. And this income is the fuel for everything. The goal isn't to pay off debt quickly, the way Michael tells us to do. Instead, it is to make sure that the asset's income is greater than the cost of the debt that it generated. So let's break this down with the classic example, real estate. Imagine an investor wants to buy a $1 million commercial property. The average person would think about saving up the full $1 million. That could take a lifetime. And all the while, that cash isn't working for them. Wealthy investors do the opposite. They go to a bank and say, I want to buy a $1 million property and I'll put down 20%, which is $200,000. The bank provides the other $800,000 as a loan. Now, one quick step that didn't factor into this, that $200,000 could be a property that they already have in their possession that is valued at $400,000, and they leverage it for 50% of its value to put up the $200,000 that the bank is going to use to leverage the $1 million purchase, which means the person is not coming out of pocket any actual money. Yeah, that works too. Now, here's where the two paths diverge. The average person, conditioned to buy home mortgages, is obsessed with paying that $800,000 loan down to zero. The wealthy investor has a totally different mindset. First, they make sure that the property is an income producing asset. So let's say that building generates $100,000 a year in rent. An annual mortgage payment on that $800,000 a year loan might be around $60,000. Add in property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, call it another $15,000. So the total expenses is about $75,000. So the asset brings in $100,000 and its total cost is about $75,000 that you have to hold. This leaves a $25,000 surplus of positive cash flow that goes right into the investor's pocket. Let's pause here real quick. He said, what's the loan rate? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the loan rate is. What's my loan per capita? We just said it. They're loaning you $800,000. You're generating $100,000. You're required to pay $75,000. You're profiting $25,000. So off of leveraging a $400,000 property that you already own for $200,000 worth of collateral towards the loan, so that the bank can give you the other $800,000 to buy a $1 million property that's now paying you $100,000, and you take $75,000 and pay it back, and you keep $25,000. You leveraged a $400,000 property for a $25,000 a year profit, where you did not have to spend a dollar. Some people are going to say that's not a lot of profit. Well, probably not for the average thinker. But when you think about the fact that you had a property, might even be your property, that's not turning a profit. You leveraged it for a $1 million property that is now putting $25,000 into your pocket. You don't have to get rid of the asset you already have. Now you have a second asset that's worth $1 million or more. Between the two properties, you might have $1.5 million worth of assets there, and then you're still pocketing $25,000 a year, which again, the average person that owns everything, $25,000 a year is enough. $25,000 a year is not enough when you're renting, because the property might cost $2,000 a month by itself, and that's $24,000 a year. But if you own your own home and you own your own car, those are the two biggest expenses that you have. And then your phone bill, if you're doing it wisely, is like $100 a month, which is like $1,200 a year. Utilities should be less than $500 a month, which is less than $5,000 a year. So that's $6,000 a year. And groceries is less than $500 a month, which is less than $5,000 a year. So utilities and groceries is $10,000. Your phone is $1,200. So that's $11,200 out of $20,000, $25,000. You still have 14,000 more dollars that you can't find anything to do unless you had an outstanding mortgage or a car loan. Oh, car insurance, but car insurance is going to run you another, if you got low car insurance might run you another $2,000. But that brings you from 1,100 to 1,300. And out of $25,000, that still leaves you with $12,000. So what are you doing with the other $12,000? A lot of people clubbing, hanging out with their homies, wasting money on chicks. But if that other $12,000 was going into a brokerage account, you got everything that you need, and you can actually live an affordable lifestyle with $24,000. Now, women want a man with $100,000, but if he owns all of his shit, he doesn't need $100,000. He really only needs about 24 to 25. If you got two people, 30. That's all you really need to make sure that everybody's got what they need. Because the cost of a woman's upkeep is about $15,000 a year. So if the man is only living off of $12,000 or $13,000 a year, the other 15,000 is 28,000, and that's still under the 30,000, and everybody gets to eat. So 20,000 per door is great. Yeah. Well, it's 20,000 average for the entire complex, but I mean, if it was 20,000 per door, that would be great. But we're not talking about $20 per door. We're talking about the overall profit from the property. So the investor would have used a $200,000 asset, or obtained $200,000 of cash, and put that up to control $1 million asset. And then the debt wasn't a burden. It actually was the key that unlocked the deal. And who's going to be paying for the debt? The tenants. The rent checks are what covers the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the repairs on the property. The investor has effectively outsourced the cost of the debt. That $25,000 cash flow is an immediate 12.5% return on investment of the $200,000 that was leveraged towards this opportunity. That's already fantastic. But the machine has other gears turning, because while the tenants are paying the mortgage, part of every payment reduces the loan's principal. And this means that the investor's equity in the property grows ever so slightly every single month, automatically. So they don't have to do nothing. The debt is shrinking, paid for by someone else. At the same time, the property itself is hopefully appreciating in value, as long as you're taking care of it and the tenants aren't destroying it. And if that $1 million property appreciates by 3% in a year, that is now going to be $1,030,000. That's another $30,000 in wealth created on paper. So in just 1 year, the investor has pocketed $25,000 in cash, had their debt paid down by thousands by the tenants, gained $30,000 in appreciation. And all of this was made possible by taking out an $800,000 debt, a debt that was an amplifier. It was the tool that turned $200,000 into $1 million cash flow asset. This principle isn't just for real estate. It is used to buy businesses, acquire dividend paying stocks on margin, and any other venture where the assets return outstripes the interest rate. The goal is always the same: create a machine where the asset pays for the debt and leaves you a profit, all while the asset itself grows in value. He said the house is on average 1/3 of your monthly income, including utilities, insurance, etc. That's the way it's supposed to be, but that's not how Americans currently live. And that's one of the reasons why I tell people they're doing it wrong. Because since the cost of the house should be 1/3, it's 30% or 33% of your standard of living. If you're making 40,000 a year, 25% of that is 10,000 a year. 30% of 40,000 should be close to about 15,000, which is 1,200 to 1,500 a month. And if you're paying more than that, you're wasting your fucking money. If you're paying $5,000 a month and you are making 40,000 and 45,000 a year, you're paying too much. And it's not because they're overcharging you. It is because you chose a luxurious life with a broke man's income, and that was not beneficial for you. So if the cash flow machine is the engine, the tax shield is the high octane fuel. The wealthy knows it's not just about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And debt is one of those best tax reduction tools on the planet. This involves two key components: interest deductible and depreciation. So the deductibility and the depreciation. Let's go back to our real estate investor. They borrowed 800,000. The interest paid on the business debt is tax deductible. If the $60,000 in the mortgage payments includes $45,000 of interest in the first year, that $45,000 is deducted from the $100,000 of rental income. But it gets even better. The tax code allows for another phantom deduction called depreciation. The government lets you deduct a portion of the building's value each year for wear and tear, even though you didn't spend any actual cash. So for a commercial property, this might be another $25,000 a year that you can deduct. So let's do that tax math. The property generated $100,000 in real income, but for a tax purpose, the investor deducted $45,000 in mortgage interest and the $25,000 in depreciation. The taxable income isn't $100,000, it's $100,000 minus $45,000 minus $25,000, which is $30,000. They pocketed the real cash profit of $25,000, but their taxable income could be even lower than that, because in some cases you could show a paper loss for tax purposes while actually collecting positive cash flow. The debt, though the debt is through its deductible interest, has created a powerful shield against the taxes. Because the other issue that we have here is that if you're paying employees out of the other $30,000, the business doesn't pay taxes on taxes that are going to the individuals. Now, let's scale this up to the borrower and the die parts of the strategy. The investor's portfolio assets has grown to $20 million, but their original cost was only $2 million. If they sell, they'd face massive capital gains taxes on the $18 million. Instead, they take out a loan against this entire portfolio, often called a securities-backed line of credit, which is what we talked on the show before. They might borrow about $5 million out of the $20 million, but this cash is not taxable. They can use it to buy yachts, fund new businesses. Meanwhile, their $20 million portfolio is still growing, tax deferred. This brings us to the final jaw-dropping move, the die component. Under your current US tax law, when a person dies, their assets get a setup in bias. They're stepping it up in bias. This means the cost bias for tax purposes is reset to the market value on the date of death. So that $20 million portfolio was the original $2 million cost. When the owner passes and it's sent to their children, the children don't inherit a $2 million cost bias. They inherit a $20 million cost bias. And the entire $18 million capital gain that built up over the lifetime is legally a permanent erased profit. It will never be subjected to the capital gains taxes because it is actually the principal that is now being passed on to the next generation. So the children can now sell the entire $20 million portfolio the next day and pay zero capital taxes. And the $5 million loan, they simply use part of the $20 million to pay that off, walking away with a $15 million free and clear portfolio. He said, we were just talking about networking and I got all these text messages from people about garage sales and estate sales this weekend. Networking. Xander taught me about it. I'm trying to tell you. So by Networking with other individuals in garage sales and estate sales, you now have people offering you things that you don't have to go look for, and then seeking things that you don't have to market, which saves you money on connecting the product to the provider, or connecting the product to the customer, where now you're the middleman of a sale where you already know who wants and you already know who has, and you're going to get a profit from putting these two people together. I try to tell you guys, the networking is a fantastic effort. If you put your boots on the ground every day to try to turn over a buck, you are going to have more trouble putting in 80% effort to get 20% return. If you put word on the street for other people to put boots on the ground, where you are now the source of information and that information is the source of profit, you don't got to go anywhere. All you got to do is answer the phone and make a few phone calls. And that takes far less effort. And at 71, 72 years old, Michael, that is fantastic that you can answer the phone and get the job done. And now all you got to do is just pay somebody else to move the stuff for you. Fantastic effort. So I'm proud to hear that I was able to benefit you with the networking. I'm trying to tell y'all, this stuff works. If you change your mindset from I'm going to do it to I'm going to leverage someone else to get it done for me. If you change it from I'm going to pay it to I'm going to leverage someone else to pay it for me, where they're benefiting from paying it for you, but now you don't have to pay it. They're benefiting from doing it for you, but now you don't have to do it. The mindset shift from being a employee to being an owner is the shift from physically getting the job done yourself to delegating the task to someone else to get the job done for you. Now, the cost of doing business is the cost of doing business. If you sacrifice a percentage of your profits to offset the workload to somebody else, you buy back your time. You buy back your peace. You buy back the lack of stress that you have from trying to get all the stuff done. One of the reasons why hiring attorneys allows for your legal cases to be done in a more smooth fashion, they worry about your success and you worry about something else. The reason why you have financial advisors that handles your wealth, they worry about your money, you worry about spending it. This is the reason why you delegate. A lot of things can be automated through fintech, putting up machines to monitor the money, move money around, invest in other things, and that can work for you. But at some level, you're going to reach a point where the money has to be moved around manually. And if you have somebody getting paid to do that, you're likely to see more results. Now, yeah, if you put a third person in there, you might have to put a fourth person in there, because that fourth person might have to audit the third person to make sure the third person is doing it right. But regardless of the fact, as long as your money is where it's supposed to be at and you didn't have to do anything to get that done, you can live a stress-free life. Your kids and your grandkids can also live the same stress-free life by automating your system, removing yourself out of the operation, and still getting paid for its existence. This is the full sequence. And then we have to recognize, when you're buying the asset, borrowing against them tax-free, then upon death, all the gains are wiped out by the step up in bias. Debt was the key that unlocked the money, and the tax code provided the shield that protected it. It's not a loophole, it is a fundamental feature of the tax system. And the wealthy have built the process around this very system to preserve their capital across generations. The third pillar that we're going to deal with here is going to be wealth creation that goes into overdrive, using debt as a lever to amplify returns. This concept is known as leverage. This is the difference between growing rich slowly and building a fortune fast. It means using other people's money, OPM, to magnify your own gains. So let's use a simple stock market example. You have $100,000 invested. First path, the all cash investor. You take your $100,000, you buy an index fund, the market goes up 10%, your portfolio is now worth 110,000. You made a $10,000 profit, a 10% return, not bad. Part two is the leveraged investor. You take your $100,000 and you use it to control a $500,000 portfolio. You've borrowed $400,000 at an interest rate of 5%. This is a 5-to-1 leverage. The market has been the same 10% a year. Your $500,000 portfolio is now worth $550,000. That is a $50,000 gross profit. Of course, you have to pay back the interest on your loan at 5% on the $400,000. That's $20,000 for the year. So your net $50,000 profit gain minus $20,000 interest equals a $30,000 overall profit. So let's compare that. The all cash investor made $10,000. The leveraged investor started with the same $100,000 in the same market and made a $30,000 profit. A year return wasn't 10%, it was 30%. This is an explosive power of leverage. You're earning return, not just your money, but the bank's money too. This is exactly how SBLOCs work. A high net worth person with $10 million stock portfolio can get a flexible line of credit for 50 to 70% of its value at very low interest rates because the loan is secured by their blue chip stocks. They might borrow at 5% to fund the private equity deal projected to return 15%, capturing a 10% spread on borrowing the money. So look at a high profile figure like Elon Musk, who has historically pledged his Tesla shares as collateral for billions in personal loans. While his specific loan status might change, the strategy is a classic in the billionaire playbook. At this particular method, it will allow you to fund new ventures without selling your core holdings, which would trigger massive tax bills and dilute your control over the asset. The wealthy see their assets not just as a store of value, but as a launch pad for acquiring more assets. Their portfolio isn't a nest egg, it is a power base. And debt is the mechanism that transforms that statistic power into active financial fireballs. So beyond the core strategy, the ultra wealthy use debt in even more suitable ways to solidify their power. One tactic is optics management. By living on borrowed money, a billionaire can have an enormous net worth, but show a surprisingly low taxable income. Their tax returns might look more like a doctor or a lawyer's, even as they live a life funded by tax-free loan proceeds. This financial camouflage can be a huge advantage in negotiations or even for qualifying for certain tax breaks. Then there's using debt to exert political and economic clout. When a major developer wants to build a new stadium, they don't use cash, they secure massive loans. This debt pulls local banks, contractors, and unions into their orbit. Everyone has a vested interest in the project and the project's success, creating a powerful coalition that can lobby for favorable zoning, tax abandonment, and subsidies. the debt becomes a gravitational force aligning everyone and their interests with the developers. Extreme opportunity. And that's one of the things that you want to do. You want to calculate the opportunity cost. Make sure that you guys are mashing those reaction buttons while you're watching the show today. You want to calculate the opportunity cost when you're looking at what you're trying to buy versus what you've got. If you had, so when we think about the 5-to-1 leverage, if you had $10,000 in your bank account and you can leverage that $10,000 for a $20,000 loan, and then you put that $20,000 cash loan into a brokerage account, and now the brokerage account is paying off that $20,000 cash loan, you've got more money coming in. You've actually, even if you would have gotten 10% on the $10,000, which would have gotten you $1,000, the $10,000 on $20,000 would have gotten you, or the 10% on $20,000 would have gotten you $2,000, which is double. But if the interest rates that you would have been paying would have been less than the profit that you're making, you're ultimately making more than, and you're using somebody else's money. When you're, one of the things that you want to do when you're trying to leverage cash, you want to find out what, based on, and this is going to be another thing, based on good payment history, that's going to be a big factor. Debt to income, debt to credit, that's going to be 2 things, 3 things. This is going to lead the bank to determine that based on your current position, you might only need to put up 20% or 30% of the cash that you're about to borrow. If you had $10,000 and that is 30% of what you're trying to buy, that's going to be closer to $300,000. I mean, $30,000. If you did that, $10,000 for $30,000, you're 3-to-1, but you're putting $30,000 in it. Instead of getting $1,000 back off the $10,000 with 10%, you'd be getting $3,000 back off the $30,000 at 10%, where you would still be in the same market getting the same bonds. But what say you if you were riding the wave that I was riding and you're getting 15 to 20%, and you're now getting back, instead of $3,000, you're getting $6,000. You put up 10, you're getting back 6 off of 30. You're able to pay them down and keep the difference. Is that got bonds? Shit, other people money. So when you're looking at the lender, you're looking at the lender's asset-backed loan options. What you can talk to them about, what kind of loans they have. I know that they're going to want to pull your credit and see what you got going on, and it's like, no, well, standard rates. What do you guys expect your clients to put down? You can give me ballpark figures based on certain brackets, certain financial brackets. Each individual person is going to be different, but y'all have a standard operating procedure that if you're in the 650 to 700 range, you might have to put down a certain percentage. If you're in the 700 to 750 range, you might have to put down a certain percentage. Mights are not guaranteed, but it gives me an idea as to what I'm capable of and what I'm willing to do. You know, you're not trying to hold them to it. It's like, look, hypothetically, just for the sake of conversation, I'm not holding you to this. You're not giving it to me in writing. Hypothetically, what do you guys operate at? And you can find out from certain banks, from certain bank managers, what do they do with their loans? Because some people don't know, and they're going to keep saying it depends. I have to pull your credit score. It has nothing to do with my credit score. Y'all have a standard operating procedure in a certain bracket. What would you do? Let's say that you were hypothetically operating with a 685 credit score. How much money would you expect that person to put down? Let's go off of a hypothetical 690 credit score with no late payments over the past 2 years. What kind of down payment would you ask off of that? And well, it depends on the debt. Just ballpark figures, top and bottom. You know, little to no debt, what would you expect? A lot of debt, what would you expect? And they'll give you a ballpark. They'll break it down to you. At some point, they'll break it down to you. When you set enough parameters in a hypothetical question, they'll answer a question. And then you know, okay, well, based on this bank's operating procedures, I might need to put more money down to get that money than what I would with this bank. So then when you're looking at opportunity cost, the interest rates versus the amount of additional capital you can borrow against determines which bank you're going to try. But this typically works when you have either 100% asset-backed loans where they're not going to tell you no, or a marginal asset-backed loan where you're going to be putting up a certain quantity of capital to offset the extra money. Like what you did with the real estate, they leveraged the property, the value of the property, and you put up the difference, and then they gave you the 800,000. But if you're getting a cash loan, the cash loan, you might be able to get a cash loan with, like I said, 10 or 20% down if you got good credit, good payment history, and low debt outside of student loans. If that's the case, then you work that out with your bank and you draw back those assets. Now, an even more aggressive way to do this is going to be the strategic default. Now, this is mainly for non-recourse loans. So this is going to be where the collateral is the only thing the lender can seize. A wealthy investor can use this to take a calculated risk on a speculative project. So if it pays off, they win big. If it fails, they hand the keys back to the bank and walk away, protecting their core fortune. The debt is structured to isolate risk, creating a safety net unavailable to the average person. He said, let's go shopping. Now, we're not going shopping, we're investing. We're going to put the money in the right place. Now, these plays show that for the rich, debt isn't just a financial calculation. It's a multifaceted tool for managing perception, wielding influence, and isolating risk. One of the better parts about a no recourse loan is that if you have enough money in play where the lender believes that there's a decent quantity of profit in there, that they will put up the money on your behalf. You're going to do the best you can with this deal. You having a backed lender can then leverage this to other investors, leverage this deal to other investors, and now you can have a 100% investor-backed deal where, depending on the number of years of performance that you need, the investors are investing in the performance. You start showing the return, you can pay everybody back, and you keep the difference. But if this deal flops, the investors are only going to get what's left over after the assets have been liquidated. But you personally are not going to have to sell your house and your car to pay off all of these people. He said, you worry too much, jump each hurdle as they come. No, sir. You have to plan. You have to understand this is a language of power that is spoken at a very, very high level. Not too many people understand this. This is not a situation where you figure it out whenever it happens. You plan for the next step. One of the things that they have with the bonds, like you were talking about a bond, individuals can take the debt, leverage the debt by selling the debt to somebody else. When they're selling the debt to somebody else or selling the cost of the debt to somebody else with the expectation of interest, the debt can be paid by an investor. These securities can cover the cost of the operation, but you have to factor that in. You can back by Fannie Mae and back by Freddie Mac, but this only happens when you're capable of pulling all of these strings in all of these different places, when everybody who sees the deal sees a profit in the deal. You can't win them over on bullshit. You can't win them over on faith. You have to, a lot of times, have to win them over on results. You have to show them a working model. And then they're investing on expansion. The same way a bunch of people invested on a Cybertruck, $100 a person got on that Cybertruck list. 200-300 people put up $100. Well, two or 3 million people put up $100. That's well over 3 million. That's $300 million that he put up, and he can leverage that. Even if he leveraged that at 10%, if he's leveraging $300 million at 10%, he's getting $30 million, or not $30 million, $30 billion to walk through this deal, where none of that money's coming out of his pocket. He has to convince people that this is worth buying. that this is worth investing in. And then enough people that invest in it gives him the money to borrow the money to make it worth investing. And then the profits off of it being sold to the people who wanted it now cover the cost of making it and allowing money to go to the investors. Where he spent no money out of pocket for this hypothetical, it might work. But then when it does start working, it's no longer a hypothetical. It's actually a reality. So ultimately, the gap between how the rich and everyone else use debt comes down to your mindset. The average person is conditioned to chase the goal of being debt free. It's a defensive mindset rooted in fear. If I owe nothing, I am safe. Your income is your tool, and you use it to chip away at the burden of debt. It's not a bad thought, but it's not going to make you better. The wealthy operate from an offensive mindset. Their goal isn't to be debt free. Their goal is to have their columns of income producing assets grow so much faster than their debt that the debt becomes irrelevant. We call that the cost of doing business when you're making more money than you're spending, right? So think about it. Would you rather have zero debt and a $100,000 in assets, or would you rather have $10 million in debt backed by $50 million in cash flowing assets? The answer is going to be obvious. The wealthy understand that the absolute amount of debt is meaningless without the context of the asset it's set against, right? So for those of you that are driving a $20,000 car of any kind, Jetta or whatever, and you're making $50,000 a year off of that car as an Uber driver, the asset is offset by the profit. That's the value in it. You go buy you a Ford Fusion, you spent $20,000 for the Ford Fusion, you're making $75,000 in cash off of driving for Uber and Lyft. The profit from buying the car, the debt from buying the car is offset from the profit of using the car, right? This laptop cost me $500 in 2023. All the money that's made off of that laptop in the last 3 years offsets the cost of the laptop. The debt of whatever it is that you're trying to buy is supposed to be offset by the profits made from the usage of that asset. That's when it's an asset. Even investing into a podcast like this, when the podcast is paying more money than I'm paying into the podcast, that's when a podcast becomes a profit. It's a liability until it gets there, but it becomes a profit. It stays as a profit when it is there. This is going to redefine financial freedom for most people, because freedom is the absence of a monthly payment. For the rich, freedom is having assets that pay for your liabilities and then some, where you still got monthly payments, you're just not paying them. It's the freedom to use the bank's money to get even richer. And this requires a change in vocabulary. You stop thinking about paying things off and you start thinking about return on equity. You stop seeing a loan as a burden and start seeing it as a tool for leverage. You stop fearing debt and start respecting its power, learning to distinguish the bad debt that makes you poor from the good debt that builds the empire. This system is very powerful, but it is not without serious risks, because leveraging is a double-edged sword. Just as it magnifies gains, it can magnify losses with terrifying speed. The most immediate risk is a market downturn and a margin call. Go back to our leveraged investor. If the market dropped 20%, their $500,000 portfolio is now worth only $400,000. the exact amount of their loan. The bank gets nervous and issues a margin call, demanding more cash or forcing a sale of the assets at the worst possible time. This is how fortunes are wiped out. Sophisticated investors mitigate this by controlling their leverage. A bank might offer a 70% loan, but they only draw out 30%, creating a huge buffer. One of the things that the one of the biggest mistakes in this method is that a lot of people will run out there and go and grab the maximum quantity that they can get out of the offer because it gives you more opportunity. But then when things go south, you don't have any wiggle room. If you had $100,000 portfolio and you only took out 30%, which is $30,000, if the market dropped, say $20,000, you still got $80,000 out of the $100,000, which is less than what you need to manage 70%, but it is plenty to manage the 30%. If you took out half or less than half, it's less likely for them to get scared and start pressuring you to pay your loans back sooner. The second risk is an interest rate spike because many of these loans have variable rates, not fixed rates. Mortgages have fixed rates, but a lot of the cash loans and credit card leverages are variable rates, meaning that they fluctuate in the market until some of the max rates are set at 10% across the board, at least for the credit cards. When Donald Trump passed that law, you have to deal with spikes. A loan that was a bargain at 3% at one point in time becomes a burden at 7%, crushing your profit spread. To mitigate this, investors use financial instruments like interest rate swaps to fix their costs or refinance when rates are low, which means that you can have a property that you've paid 50% of the mortgage on the property and you decide to remortgage it for another 30 years with another lender that has lower rates, which spreads your payments out, reduces how much you have to pay per month, which increases your opportunity cost for profit, but it also allows you to pay more towards your principal for the next 30 years. The asset staying in your possession while it's still being paid for by the tenant is what matters. Whether or not you own it mortgage free over the next 50 years does not matter. Because the difference between paying rent and paying a mortgage is that you can calculate how much you're going to owe in 10 years when you are paying a fixed mortgage. You can't calculate how much you're going to owe next year with the 4% spike on your rent. The third and most existential is a risk in policy and tax law changes. The buy, borrow, die strategy is legal now, but it relies on specific parts of the tax code, especially the step up in basis. You have to understand that at one point in time, they set a magnitude of about 13 to $15 million worth of estate tax that was exempt. Then they dropped it down to almost 5. When these things change, if you would have inherited a $50 million asset and estate tax hit, you would have been paying more money on the $5 million tax exemption than what you would have been paying on the $13,000 tax exemption. You have to understand the death tax, not the death tax, the inheritance tax and gift tax that you have to deal with, which you don't deal with probate tax. You don't deal with these things when you're in a trust. The trust has a lot of benefits for financial protection, but the trust doesn't have a lot of tax breaks on it. So the things that you want to roll over into the trust may still trigger a probate scenario for it to be put into the trust. If you reach an age in your life where you're like, let me just go ahead and sell it to the trust right now before something happens to me, and you put it into the trust while you're still alive, you can avoid that like a living will. But if you pass like Kobe before you had a chance to put the kids on the paperwork, you're going to be dealing with a probate scenario. You can't prepare for everything, but you can prepare for some things. These provisions are politically controversial. So for years, they have been proposals to eliminate the step up in basis. In fact, as recently as March of 2026, legislation like the Equal Tax Act was introduced with the specific goal of distributing the buy, borrow, die strategy, destroying it, and treating capital gains tax as realized taxes at death. While such proposals face major hurdles, the risk is always there that Congress could change the rules of the game where wealthy individuals will pass away, leaving billions of dollars that'll get hit. If it got hit at 30%, $1 billion getting hit at 30% is a lot of money. You're looking at almost $300 million per $1 billion that's there. That they're losing a third, well over a third of their assets in that dynamic. They would go from $4 billion to $3 billion easy. And for some people, well, it's just $3 billion. That's nothing. You would have a heart attack if you lost $1 billion to taxes. Doesn't matter how much money you got. If you would have lost $1 billion to taxes, you would drop a deuce easy. Now, y'all got to think about this. If this conversation has started to shift your perspectives, if you're beginning to see debt more than just a burden, then you're on the right track. And this is just going to be one piece of the playbook the wealthy is going to use. So if you're ready to dive deeper, I want you guys to understand the legal structures, the tax strategies, and the mindsets required to navigate this world. So I wanted you guys to make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so, hit that like button and the notification button and mash those reaction buttons, because we're going to be breaking down these advanced concepts every single week. And we're going to be giving you the kind of knowledge that usually is reserved for the super rich. So I don't want you guys to miss out on the next big thing, because we're live 7 nights a week and we have this information out, a lot of information out here that helps you guys think about things in a different light. I should really write a book about this. I know you guys keep telling me to write a book about it, but again, I'm lazy. Opportunity cost. I need to prioritize one paragraph at a time. And by the time I'm done, I should not only have a novel, I should have a series. For most of the world, debt is going to be a chain. It is a way to pull future consumption into today, paid for with a lifetime of work. The advice is always to run from the debt, pay the debt off, and become debt free eventually. But now that you've seen the other side, a parallel financial universe where debt is not a chain but a key. The hands of the wealthy, debt is a system of power. It becomes the engine for cash flow, buying assets that pay for themselves. It becomes a tax shield, legally minimizing what you owed. And most importantly, it becomes a lever, using other people's money to generate exponential returns, all culminating in the buy, borrow, die strategy, a multi-generational plan to build wealth, live off of it tax-free, and pass it on to your kids and your grandkids. This isn't about being reckless. It's about a fundamental re-education. The tools of finance are neutral. The same instruments that bankrupts one person can make another a billionaire. The difference isn't the tool, it's the knowledge, the approach, and your ability to see things through. The great financial divide isn't just about the money. It is about access to this knowledge. And the system isn't a secret conspiracy. The rules are written down in the tax code for anyone to see. But the playbook is only handed to a select few individuals. So the next time that you hear somebody say all debt is bad, remember what you've seen on this show and the conversation that we're having today. The goal isn't just to get out of debt. The goal is to learn how to ascend to the level where you can use the right kind of debt to build your own empire. This is also going to play a high valued lever on your ability to impulse buy. Back in the day, buy me Prada, buy me Chanel, make me look good, blah, blah, blah. And now, higher value women that are going to be looking at that mindset as financially irresponsible are now going to start saying, no, those red bottoms do not turn me a profit. That Gucci purse does not turn me a profit. And start leveraging. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to buy stock in the Chanel company. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to get shares in the Prada, the brand. If I'm going to do something, instead of buying the G-Wagon, I'm going to buy shares in the G-Wagon company because you want to get returns on your investment. If you're going to leverage your portfolio to buy you a G-Wagon, at least leverage your portfolio to buy the G-Wagon cash up front for the business so that it's a tax write-off where the vehicle pays for itself. You should never buy anything that you don't have 3 to 10 times more cash to pay for it. So if a G-Wagon costs 50 grand, you should probably have 500 grand sitting somewhere where you could pay for it. You don't have that. If all you got is the 10% or 20% down on that vehicle, that's probably not the vehicle for you. You might have $25,000 to buy a Honda Civic cash up front. But if you don't have $100,000 to buy 4 Honda Civics, you probably shouldn't buy the first one. That's the mindset of millionaires. What do you plan on doing with that car? Is that car going to pay for itself? Are you going to put it to work to make money for you? Is it your daily driver to get you to and from work, or are you buying it just because it looks nice? When you start thinking about these types of questions, am I buying this because it looks nice? Am I buying it because it makes me feel good? Am I buying it for entertainment, or am I buying it for a strategic financial purpose? That's when you start dealing with opportunity costs. You start dealing with where you could have put this money to make money for you versus this impulse buy that's not going to turn you a profit. Right? So, as I told y'all, we didn't have enough for a 6-hour show, but we had enough for a 2-hour show. I'm going to start by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking y'all to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, I give y'all this information to help y'all become higher value men. Not just by your finances, also by your financial decisions. Finding the things in your life that you can control, making changes in the things you don't like, improves your standard of living. Then you have the ability to navigate around the things you cannot control. And ladies, while this is a male-driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can make yourselves higher value women by paying attention to your 20-year plan. Where do you want to be at in 20 years? Reverse engineer that plan and then utilize your efforts to achieve those goals. Keep your eyes and ears open for that potential suitor that matches with your 20-year plan where y'all can get there together. Your 20-year plan might turn into a 10-year plan because 2 people can get to $1 million faster than one. I mean, unless you're hitting big multi-million dollar deals. Either way it goes, if you have a financially savvy partner and y'all are working on investment opportunities, y'all have more capital to leverage between 2 incomes than what you would have with 1 income. Y'all have more to leverage with 2 people's assets than what you have with 1 person's assets. That's why 1 person will try to get 20 investors to invest in 1 deal instead of having 1 person try to fund the whole deal by themselves. You can get there faster. A $1 million real estate investment property that needed $200,000, you can acquire that by getting 4 people to put up $25,000. So why do I have to put up $200,000 when I could get 4 people to put up $25,000? Then out of the $25,000 that's being paid back, if each person is getting back $5,000, I made $5,000 off the deal. You're going to say, that's not a lot of money. But if I put up no money, I own $1 million property. I have extra $30,000 a year increased value in this property. I made a $5,000 profit in cash, but I can leverage the property for the extra $30,000 of capital that was gained. I can pay myself, and then the investors get what they need. You don't have to make the most out of the deal. You just got to make enough out of the deal. It's far cheaper with investors. It's far cheaper with investors. Exactly. And you control the money. You control the money and you control the assets. You're gonna give the investors their cut, but you can leverage the debt, take out a second mortgage on a property, pay yourself 100 grand. That's 4 years worth of money. You can pay the investors out of the remainder. You don't got to worry about nothing. The tenants is paying for the loan. The tenants are paying the investors. You already got your cut. And if you were successful with this first $1 million property, when you go for another $1 million property, what do you think is going to happen? Those investors are going to fund it again. You can do that 10 times and be getting back $50,000 with no money out of your own pocket, because you've built the legacy that people trust your financial decisions because you made them money. Anybody who could put up $25,000 and get back $5,000 a year for 5 years, you made your money back in full. That's the rule of 72. It takes 5 years to get back your full investment. A lot of people don't think about that. So if this property is going to be here for 50 years, you're going to get 100% of your money back in 5 years, and you're going to maintain getting this money for another 50 years. Your 25 grand in 10 years would give you 50 grand. You have no problem with parking your money in this business. I leverage the property. I get my 100 grand. I walk away from the deal. The system is paying itself. I've got $1 million property. I go somewhere else and say, hey, I'm going to get this $1 million property. Look at what happened with the last $1 million property. I'm going to make you a millionaire. What happens? The 100 grand I pay myself, I'm not even putting it in the next deal. I'm just talking to the folks like, hey, if y'all jump in, y'all can make money like the last group. This is how high profit real estate investors make their money. It's like a welding cake. Everyone gets a slice and everyone's happy. I don't have to get the biggest slice because I can only eat so much cake. I can get 5% of the cake. But if I get 5% of every cake and I've had 100 cakes, since I did most of the work, but you didn't. You set it up. The most you did was set it up. You negotiated with a couple people. You networked a little bit. You're going to take your piece out for networking. Everybody else is going to get their piece out for investing in it. But the system is running itself. Every time you set up something and it runs itself, it's going to get bigger. You ultimately end up with the biggest piece because you will have multiple opportunities running at the same time. You don't need to walk away with 80% of the deal to have 80% of the money. You can get 10% of the deal. You can get 1% of 10 deals and have 10% of the deal. Everybody else can get 1% of each deal, and you still have 9% more profits than they do. The difference is stop being greedy. Because if each person, if you get 10% from each person that you're in business with, and you're in business with 10 people, 100% of what one deal might have cost, you're pocketing that across 10 deals. Each other person might be getting 20 or 30% out of each individual deal, but you're still making more money collectively out of all of the deals combined. One of the other mindsets that I'm going to leave you guys with tonight: rich people don't pay attention to how much other people are making. What they pay attention to is how much can I make out of this? Because yeah, if I can help you make twice as much money as I made out of this deal, what do I have? A guaranteed investor for the next deal. So does it make more sense for me to take the most money out of this deal, or does it make more sense to me to put more money into the other person's pocket so that they can fund my next deal? Because I'm not spending any money. The guy that put up the 25 grand, he's got 25 grand tied up in the deal. So if I got 5 grand and he's got 5 grand, he's still out 20 grand. I'm out the time I put this deal together. If he invests in 5 of my deals, he's got 125 grand in 5 of my deals. Each one of those deals might be paying him 25 grand. But if I'm getting paid 25 grand too, he's still out 100 grand, and I am out the time it took for me to put those 5 deals together. So do I have to make more than everybody else out of the deal? No. I got to get my fair share. But the money I get from other people's money is also not necessarily having to be as much as other people are getting out of the deal. Money from opportunity, that's exactly what we're going for. We're profiting off of other people's money, and we're going to make money from the opportunities that we provided to other people. My legacy is the success of the other people around me, which also builds a type of reputation where if you fuck with him, you're going to get paid. You do business with him, you're going to get paid. Whatever that man touches turns into a profit. That is going to lead to the reputation of the gold standard. When you operating off the gold standard, nobody's going to tell you no. So the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep chasing that debt-free mindset? Are you going to keep rushing to pay off debt? Or are you going to leverage debt for more profits? He said we profit off other people's misery. That is called capitalism. We profit off of the misery. We profit off of the stupid. We profit off of the weak. That's capitalism. So that's all I've got for you guys for tonight. I want to thank you guys for coming to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. I'm not landing on higher ground where living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never yield.